You've reached Monster 911, and I'm Lance Hightower. I've been taking cryptid emergency calls for over 5 years. If you have a cryptid emergency, please call our toll-free number, 866-306-8085. I can help you. What's your emergency?
Well, I can tell you about not taking a picture. This is about 4 years ago. I had a security contract with a school in Pennsylvania. And I'm in her house. Now, my shift started at 11 p.m. till 7:30 a.m. I go out there like I've done 100 times, 1,000 times. I look up at the sky. This triangle with 4 lights underneath it was just there, not moving. I had my phone in my shirt pocket. I could have took a video, and I didn't. Okay? And this is in the middle of nowhere, too. So I go do my shift. I come back. I didn't say nothing to her. Next night, I'm leaving. I open the door, go out the storm door, and there it is again. This time I went and got her. I said, come here, you got to see this, you got to see this. She said, what is it? I said, you've seen your first UFO. And it jumped, it skipped, like, and it stopped. And she says, look, it skipped, it jumped, da, 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 da. I said, yeah, you see the 4 lights under it? Yeah, I see the 4 lights under it. And she was stunned. And she's got her phone. And she didn't know enough to video it. And I didn't know enough to video it, so I'm a damn sheriff. That's 2 nights in a row, right?
Right.
Okay. I go to work a couple of days later. Again, it was not there. Oh, I said, good, I'm glad this, whatever. It had a solid underneath. There was the 4 lights. And the front of it was a turquoise, beautiful blue that went a third down the length of it. Beautiful blue. It had red light, blue light, white light, and a green light underneath it. And I'm thinking, well, this is the kicker right here. So I go do my shift a couple nights later. Not there. Oh, great. Whew. So I'm driving down the highway going to the school, and there's no traffic. It's like, that's rare. No big deal. In the medium, there the damn thing was. Really, well, it was really low to the ground those 2 nights. Now, this was low to the ground. So I stopped, and I seen the back of it, and the back was beautiful red. The whole back was red. And I'm thinking, oh, no. So I'm locking the gates up at the school. I just seen the 3 lights, but they were way up. What I did was I cast it out in the name of Jesus, and it was gone. She's seen it. Doesn't interest her, though.
That's interesting. How far away was it when you came upon it?
Well, as soon as I walked out that door and I looked up, it appeared to be maybe, I don't know, 80 feet in that turquoise blue on the front end, going a third of the way down.
Did you see any markings anywhere on it by chance, or did it have any markings?
No markings. I didn't see no markings. And she's got her phone, I got my phone. What's the matter with us?
Well, that's the thing, is that there's nothing. That's just human. These things happen when you least expect it. So whether it's a UFO sighting or a creature sighting,
right now I'm shaking all over my knees.
Well, it takes a lot of courage to.
You mentioned Pilsner. I just opened one up. I'm shaking. Middle of light.
Well,
oh my goodness.
The thing of it is that I understand when people say, well, you have no proof and these people said this and that. And I'm like, well, look, even
Now,
natural instinct is now, if you're an investigator and this is something of interest and you're looking to have the experience, you'll probably have thousands and thousands of hours of nothingness before you actually get something. And most people aren't running with a dash cam and aren't just always have. Now a lot of people are nowadays semi truck drivers and things like that, but for accident purposes, if they get in an accident and they catch these inadvertently. But I'm going to say that most people don't think of it. That's not something that's a natural instinct to do unless you're a professional photographic journalist or something like that, where you just automatically reach for a camera. Some people have that quick instinct, and you've got even, but having a phone, I mean, a phone is more than a phone now. It's a computer, it's a video, it's picture, it's everything. So we just don't think of it. You know, hindsight is always 20/20. We just don't think of those things, and that's normal. That's very normal.
I that stuff, since I'm a child, has been following me all my life. And I have memories, some I don't, but some I do. And it's speeding up so fast. There's more things happening to more people. But like you said a little bit back, they won't tell anybody.
No.
Because they don't want the ridicule. I couldn't tell nobody because I'm carrying the freaking badge. How long would I have a job, right?
Well, right. I mean, that's the thing. There's a lot of occupations that you can probably say these things and actually give your name, but unfortunately, people live in small towns, and you never know who listens to a show. And some of these people I've interviewed are pastors. They are the president of the Chamber of Commerce. I've done. I interviewed an NFL football player that actually was working back for a semi-professional team. He didn't want to be known. I mean, these people, they know they've worked so hard at their job, and they know that there's certain thought processes and demeanor and professionalism that you need to have, like in what you do for a living, and that to keep that and maintain that integrity, you start talking about laser shooting out of eyes and creatures and second rows of teeth, and people go, you've been how long have you worked? You've been overworked. You need a vacation.
Oh, in that case, I would have had a permanent vacation.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a private detective now after my law enforcement career, so I basically work for myself. But I could start talking. I could have started talking a long time ago too, but I didn't. Well, here comes that screwy private detective again. Yeah, you know.
Right. Well, speaking of that, how having all this bottled up, and we say this a lot, how it can affect a person's life.
Yes.
How is it affect, if you don't mind sharing, how do you think it's affected your ability to go outdoors as well as your daily life? What have you noticed?
Everything up. I haven't been to that location since I seen that monster. I stay away from that part of the mountain. I loved it on top of that mountain. It was just so serene. It was mental therapy for me. Just get away from people. I don't want to arrest nobody. I just let me up here. Leave me alone. I can't do that no more. It made me, my personal life, I'm going through a divorce right now. Okay?
I'm sorry to hear that.
Not me. It was worth every penny I paid. It disrupted my whole life, period. My favorite hunting spot, plus most of the deer, they're slaughtered. Them things killed them. And we had one of the best deer areas in the whole county. It slowly started to dwindle away. And that's why those things are meat eaters. They'll eat anything, actually. To feed something every day that big they're going to go through a lot of deer, especially if this whole clan of them. They might have a whole clan of regular Bigfoots and a whole clan of these, what'd you say, dogman? You think that was a dogman?
Well, if it was, it's some type of a hybrid. Part of me says yes, part of me says no. Now, as far as the classic canine-looking features of what we've been calling the true dogman, like our teammate Wiley Dave saw in 2013, he said everything about it was canine. It had the dog hocks for the rear hindquarters. It had a relatively small waist.
This did too.
Its shoulders, though, on the one he saw were about 4 feet across, 4.5 feet across. And it had a muzzle, but it wasn't like really long. And the teeth on it, it didn't have double row sets of teeth. It had dog type of teeth, but it had incisors on the bottom and the top that were really long, but they were just 3 times larger than any domesticated dog, or the teeth size. The tongue was huge. Everything about it was just 3 times larger than normal. He said that he estimated the one he saw when it was standing up, when it came in on all fours and it got into this dry riverbed and it stood up, he said it was about 7.5 to 8 feet in height, and it weighed somewhere around 550 pounds.
Wow. I can only estimate how much this thing weighed, because, like I said, it was sitting down. And but I got a good guess on how tall it was if it would have stood up. Had to be 11 feet tall if it stood up.
Golly.
Sure, because those legs were 6 to 7 feet long. At about another 5 feet body-wise. And, there it is. And this thing had a red tongue, and it was hanging out the right side of its mouth after it turned its head and wanted to kill me. It had a piece of meat somewhere. I could see it on the tongue, but the tongue was really long and it was red. And
golly.
The thing had to weigh, just guessing, it had to weigh 500 pounds at least. It had that little skinny waist like you see on a football player, and the rest of them are huge. The rest of the body's huge, but no muscles. It had thin arms, long arms, but thin. Usually you see these things on television, you got all these muscles and everything, not this one. But I'm sure it made up for the lack of muscles with the meanness.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not fitting the classic dogman version, but now there's people that say that there are other hybrids. They give them different types, and we haven't come across too many of those as far as people describing it. Yours would be the closest, but when people describe, they'll say that some of these creatures are somewhat Bigfoot. They're like a hybrid of Bigfoot and Dogman type combined. Well, they'll have pointy ears, but they'll have a body, and they'll have a shortened muzzle, but they'll have kind of digits like fingers, but they'll have claws, and they'll have feet somewhat like a human, but they have claws on the end of toes rather than nails. And I haven't come across too many of those encounters. This one here is very horrifying just because of the nature of, you describe what it's in its mouth, having a muzzle and somewhat canine features, but with the eyes that, when you saw these eyes, when it turned and you saw this beam come out, was it an infinite beam? Like, did it go all the way to the ground, or what?
No, it looked, when it turned its head to the left, there was trees, regular woods, okay? And it went like it didn't make noise, but it would, and it was out like in a half a second. It was, the beam came out like a half a second, like, there it was.
Did it make a noise when the beam came out? Or
Oh no, that was me making that noise.
okay, gotcha. Just so you saw this when it turned. It's just this. You definitely saw a light emit from its eye sockets. Boom.
Yes.
And then you saw this red, but on the outer perimeter of this beam, you saw this green.
Green. Yes. Green. It was a laser. I mean, what else could it be? Just like a laser.
Well, it's astounding to me to see this, and it's like 1:30 or 2 p.m. in the afternoon.
Yeah. I've been doing that railroad bed for 45 years, hunting and everything. I never seen anything like it. Just deer till the deer disappeared.
Well, and with your background in law enforcement and in military, you're trained to look at details.
Yes.
And to notice of the details of the details. So it's that's why when we first start talking, that sense of credibility matters, kind of where a person's coming from, the context of what they've done for a living, where they've come from. The woods is not anything new to you. You've been out numerous times. You know what bears look like. You know what certain sounds sound like. And to see something 20 feet away and looking at the details of this thing for 5 minutes, and
Yep.
that's definitely ingrained. Rather, it's a 5 minute is like eternity compared to 5 seconds.
Oh yeah. Of course, I understand what you're talking about completely, and you're 100% right, because yeah, we do pay attention to detail, because that's the whole name of the game.
Mm-hmm.
And as far as after I got my mind absorbed at what I was looking at, I'm examining it now the best I could from 20 feet away. And I went up and down its body. I'm looking at the legs, the feet, the fur on the deer. The deer hide was up, and his hands were underneath it.
So
And I looked at everything.
that's strange.
I didn't realize how big that head was until it turned his head to the left.
I wonder what it was doing with the hide, if it was pulling meat from the underside.
That's what I suspect, because what else could be the reason? And where the hell were the bones in the head? Like you said, there was no bones. There was no head. There was no things thrown around like meat or whatever. Maybe another one was there and took the leftovers. I don't know, but there was nothing there but that deer hide on its lap.
Well, and that's a posture, really, honestly, if, you know, that my wife and I have been to these rendezvous, mountain man rendezvous, and when someone's cleaning deer hide, they don't quite do it that way, but I've seen plenty of humans sit down on their bottom and with the deer hide, and they're scraping it. You know, they're doing something with the hide. They're going to utilize the hide, and
Right. Yeah.
how or what it's going to do if it was picking meat from the underside. But you would think it would have the inside of the hide up,
Yeah.
and eating meat off it, or pulling meat off the top of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I thought about that a lot of times. That wasn't the way it was.
But it was a deer hide. You did notice.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that was a deer. That was a deer hide deal. Yeah. It wasn't the whole hide. It was like a piece of it.
Oh, okay.
A big piece, because it went right across its legs, okay, and a little bit hanging over on each end. So that wasn't a full hide. That's what I was thinking. It had a buddy sharing the hors d'oeuvres, you know.
Sure, and it very well may have been somewhere not too far away.
It was probably watching me, for all I know.
Well, that's true too. And it was, aside from some very strange features that you saw, did it make any noise?
Nope.
Nothing like that. Did you smell anything?
I didn't smell anything. This thing looked really clean. Now, I understand that when it gets upset with a person, it'll excrete some type of odor.
We
I don't
think,
know if it's accurate or not.
yeah. There's been a couple circumstances where that may be the possibility. We're not quite sure yet of that, but I think if you would have had at that time, again, this is what year did you say? This is in the 80s?
2000. No, this when I seen this thing was middle of September in 2002.
Oh, 2002.
Yep.
So had you had some camera like they have now, these walking cameras, I mean, that would have been the shot of the century.
That would have been the cat's pajamas.
Yeah.
No. Well, after 45 years of seeing nothing like that, there was no purpose for me to have anything like that.
Well, and that brings up another good point when you just said that, is that there's plenty of people that will listen to these shows that are intrigued, that they've been hunting 40, 45, 50, 55 years, and they've never seen anything like this. And many of them say, I've heard some crazy stuff, but I've never seen anything. So, and they usually will ask a very logical question. How come I haven't seen something? How come I didn't see? Well, and I answer, I don't know. How do you know that something hasn't seen you, though? That's what we don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I think you just came upon, he obviously thought it was safe to sit down where he thought, we're calling it a he, but wherever this creature, it thought it was safe. I mean, obviously there's not a lot of people out that way. And so it decided just to cop a squat right there and nibble on some leftovers of whatever it was, the deer meat on the hide. But I don't know. That's a good question that a lot of people, I can't answer, is that I
was in the wrong place at the wrong time.
There you go.
Yeah. And there's nobody basically back there on that mountain besides me. Kids in the summertime go fishing right off that road, Macadam Road. But other than that, very rare that I see somebody back there, unless it's deer season.
Yeah.
So this thing being the top of the food chain and so evil and big, he don't care who sees it because he'll kill him.
Well, and I think that, I don't know what level of intelligence, we know that when we talk about the level of intelligence with these dogman creatures, that there's a level of intelligence that's really terrifying, because not only do they have this massive size and abnormal strength and speed, but they have a level of intelligence, it's just as scary, that they know how to open doors, twist doorknobs, unscrew light bulbs. They know how to take open latches on gates.
Well, my theory on these things are that the federal government does have them, dead and alive. And also part of my theory is they're trying to develop a super soldier, just like Stalin tried to do, but he failed. Okay? I think this is what they're trying to do. I mean, they have them, dead and alive. They want to see what makes them tick and try to, I shouldn't say rehabilitate, but try to train them, because, like you said, they have this intelligence. So why else would the federal government be hiding this from the people, especially allow all these people disappear, children, adults, in these national parks? Nobody ever finds them, but parts of their bodies 30 feet up in a freaking tree and clothing in the middle of a creek on top of a rock. Why wouldn't they tell us? Because it has something to do with the military. That's my theory.
Yeah, well, I don't think you're far off at all. I think this is a baffling question my brothers and I have had, is that when you get the military, why would the military be involved at all? Well, You're dealing with unknown creatures or known creatures. What part did they create these? Is this a creature that they have portions of it that are terrestrial in nature, and they combined it with known creatures of this earth? I don't know. That's the mystery. But I do know that these government boys, we like to call them the MIBs, or I call them the Cryptid Intelligence Agency, the CIA, they're always, what's really striking and intriguing is that anytime you have sightings, especially of these dogman creatures, you always somehow, before the word gets out, somehow they know where they're at. There'll be vehicles in an area, dark tinted windows. It doesn't have to be SUVs. It can be any kind of caliber or model of car. And they usually will have helicopters or drones in the area. How they know where they're at before word gets even spoken about or the story gets shared, I can't help but feel that these things somehow are chipped.
Yes, I was going to say that.
And if so, why in the heck would you let these things go? That's the part that I'm very concerned about, baffled about, just totally unknowing what's the $64,000 answer. And maybe it is revolving around, a super soldier. I don't know. Are they wanting to study these things? If so part of me says I don't think they have a handle on them. I think they just kind of follow where they know they're at, and they just kind of see what their range is. But if so, why would the government let something loose like that is like the super, super ultimate predator?
That's a good question. Very good question. Once I start subtracting the possibilities, I come up with just one conclusion. They want them for a reason. The feds want them for a reason. What's the reason? Well, super soldier. What else could it be?
Yeah, I don't know either. Yeah, that's a good point. That's a very good point. It can definitely drive you crazy trying to think of why. And if they're doing this and letting him roam free, and they know you know about it, or that you're looking for them and they shut you down, well, that's kind of a big job. Because if all these, and people always ask me, Lance, it seems like these things are everywhere. Is there an explosion of these things? I said, well, here's the thing. We have the internet, and information can go across the other side of the globe in seconds. So we have the transfer of information so fast, you can't, sneeze without someone in China knowing about it. So that's one aspect. Information is global, truly global now. So everything you can know about in an instant. So that is another part of the equation. But the other part is that we've got so many people seeing these things now. And the thing of it is that those are only the reported cases. I believe that there are literally thousands and thousands more of reports that we'll never get, because they have told these people in so many terms to shut their lip and don't discuss it. You need to forget about it. And they don't pay them off. They threaten them off.
Ah, boy. Bad news. They're bad news, the feds.
Yeah, and they just basically say, you're going to forget about what you saw and what happened.
Okay.
And
all right, that kind of proves my theory. Okay, because why would they do it?
Well, that's just it. Why is such a national military interest involved? What is it? What are they afraid of?
I think they're afraid of the people finding out the truth.
I agree.
It's another cover-up, like to cover up everything else.
I agree with that.
Assassination, it goes on and on.
Yes. That's the thing, is I agree with it. And they're shuffling who knows how many people over 50 years, and I'm just saying they've had about 5 decades to perfect their threats and coercion and how they do what they do.
Oh, they ruin your life.
Yeah, and they literally can. And people don't realize this, but they sure can.
Yep. I can remember that show. I think it was your show. Yeah, I think it was, where the Navy SEAL got killed, and Navy SEALs killed the wrong one because I think this is Colorado. I'm not sure if it's state. But this white van pulled up. The Navy SEALs didn't know why they were there. and it was in another state, but it had Pennsylvania state license plate on it. And there was a short guy and a tall guy. And Navy SEAL says, these guys are CIA. Okay, we're following orders. So they heard all these shots up on the top of some mountain, and they went up there because they were ordered to. Now they knew how to do it, why they were there. So all the shots went off, and these two guys in civilian clothes, they said we shot the wrong one. That proves what you said. These things are chipped.
Mm.
And on his vehicle, he had like a wand, like a small little satellite dish, tracking it. The one that they wanted was a female. They shot the male to death. There's a whole squad of Navy SEALs up on that mountain. These two guys, they went up there. They had to get into the action. So the one that they wanted came out of the woods, threw one Navy SEAL against the tree, and crippled him for life. And he ended up dying a couple of years after that. He just couldn't sustain the injuries any longer. And his buddy was the one that was on, I think it was your show. You remember that one?
I don't think it was our show. I know they kind of, all shows kind of blend together somewhat, but I do remember, I think I had heard that one. I just can't remember which show it was, which podcast show.
Yeah. But these Navy SEALs, they were, the one guy that was a witness to everything, he said, this is just wrong. They lied to us. Once we got there, just follow us. And the guy had that little radar thing, and he goes up to his buddy in front of the Navy SEALs and says, you shot the wrong one. So they got to be tagged, just like you said before.
Yeah, I think there's a level of some way that they can track them, and that's why they're there, Johnny on the spot. I think these people that work for the government, I think there's thousands and thousands and thousands of these people employed in this division, whatever division they call it, and they're very secret about who they work for. They don't divulge their name. I think they're employed all over each state, and that's how they can be at a location with a sighting in a matter of hours. And they use local law enforcement in many cases, but they use, in most cases, they use the local military bases as a security area if they need to secure one of these dead creatures or destroyed property by these creatures. They collect all of the materials of anything that the creature has destroyed. They don't want anything of any evidence out. They will go through and erase any prints, any property that was destroyed by these creatures. They will collect all of that, and that goes to the local or area military, whatever the closest Air Force base is, Army base, and it's held in a very secret facility at these places, and then ultimately it's shipped to who knows where.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
What's the explosion of the population with these things? It's like they're everywhere. Every state except Hawaii, especially in the South, like you said.
Yeah, I wish I knew. I mean, obviously, to explode like that, there logically has to have a male and a female, maybe. I mean, we don't know, but I'm just assuming that there is males and females.
Yeah, sure. Oh, they've seen little ones, little babies.
Yeah.
Breastfeeding on the mother.
There's still plenty of land and isolated remote areas where they can get to, just like you were describing, kind of the area that you saw this one creature. And even though that some deer populations have dwindled in some areas, there's still numerous millions and millions and millions of acres across the U.S. in every state that has millions of deer and smaller game and rabbits and squirrels and raccoons and fish and wetlands and migratory birds and areas that are natural berries and natural nut areas, that there's so much food out there. Now, you would have to have a lot of food for these to keep up the kilocalories of such a large body.
Yeah, sure.
So you're hunting all the time, and I think these things have just kind of been dormant for a long time, and now with the internet being so prevalent and people able to share stories and look online of other people that sharing their stories, I think that's the reason why all of this has really, I do think that there is some type of an explosion with these creatures being seen, and their, I guess, their reproducibility. I think that why, I'm not sure. Someone could easily say, well, it's the last days. I don't know. But I will say this, even Christ said, I don't even know the day and the time.
Yes.
Only my Father in heaven does. So I don't know. That I cannot answer, obviously. But I will say that I do believe there's an uptick. Why? That's another question. I just can't put my finger on it. If it's that, we are a little bit closer to the end days, I don't know. It sure seems that way. If you go to the extrapolate and go to that next level, but why they're so prevalent and why the government protects these things when everybody, it's kind of like once you see one, you don't have to be convinced that there's a possibility of more. If you've seen one, you go, okay, yeah, tell me there's 5 or 500 or 5,000, I'll believe you, because I saw one. That's all that was enough for me. And so I don't really have a good handle on it, but just to say that there are plenty of lands that are isolated, that very few people live on, with plenty of meat sources and vegetation sources that can thrive a big-bodied creature on. And a lot of people will say, well, can these things die? You can't kill them. Well, who says that? I think there are a lot of these, and this is just my opinion, I think there's some podcast stories that people are not so truthful with. It's a drama show. When I hear of bullets bouncing off, things like that, my initial instinct is to say, I don't know how much I believe that, because I don't. When you have high ballistic tip and hard cast ammo that's able to penetrate even thick game animals like rhinos, elephant hide, things like that. Now, that's assuming that I understand the creature, which I don't. That's why I'm kind of hesitating and stuttering here, because I don't know. You saw laser beams projecting out of their eyes. So does that make their hide special? What about their internal anatomy or their neural anatomy? That I don't know. So part of me wants to say, I don't know if ammo or bullets are bouncing off the hide, but I will say if it eats, it drinks, and it poops in the woods, it probably can be killed. I'm almost about 99% sure. But why would you want to kill it? What's the reason? You don't want to pick a fight because you may end up getting more than what you bargained for. So it's kind of one of those things that it's a really double standard here of I'm curious as to the anatomy of these things, if they're close to what we have on this planet, of something that looks very similar. But at the same token, I'm also just baffled like anyone else. Like, how do they thrive? How do they hunt? Is there a language? They've got to have some language. All creatures on this earth have some language, how they communicate. Even ants have some type of pheromone type of, not necessarily a speaking language, but a chemical language that they understand. And so But when you get into the creatures, warm-blooded animals, like what we're talking about, mammals that probably have a gestation period. They don't hatch their young. They probably are born very much like most mammals, hot-blooded animals, or warm-blooded animals, is that there is languages. There's a language. And that's what we're curious about. And that's why we seek out to try and find these creatures so we can understand them. Not necessarily to hunt them down, but I want to understand what it is we're dealing with. And I don't recommend doing what we do because it's not something that I just tell people that please be careful if you go out, because you've got to know your opponent. And we do a lot of contingency plans before we go out. We're way over the top, but at least we know how to react. And one of the reasons why we haven't taken a lot of people out with us, even though we've had many, many people want to, is because I don't know how they're going to respond in a circumstance or situation. And I sure in the heck don't want them having a gun, because I don't want them shooting me or themselves.
Yeah, being trigger happy.
Yes. And it's easy to say, well, I would react this way or that way or this way. Well, it's easy to say that. It really is. And I understand. But when you see something like what you saw, that changes everything.
That makes it spiritual to me.
Yeah.
Because there's no rhyme or reason. There's no common sense to saying this is an animal. It's beyond an animal. It's demonic. Because how could it force a laser beam out of both eyes at will and then bring it back? It's got to be demonic. There's no other explanation for it, because that's beyond supernatural. Supernatural is like ghosts and stuff, or things like that. But
when it looked at you, when you saw it, it turned, and it turned further to look at you. Did it not?
Yes. It looked at me with that one red eye. Okay, it's the only eye I could see. It looked at me, solid red, raised its lip, opened its jaw, and like, I want to totally destroy you now. But my prayer to God, I said, please, Heavenly Father, don't let this thing kill me. Please don't let it hurt me. And it didn't. And it could have.
Right. That's what a horrific visualization of what you saw.
Yeah, I wish I was 1,000 yards away, not 20 feet away. I wish it never friggin' happened. It ruined my hunting. It totally friggin' destroyed my personal life in many respects. And these guys who want to see one, I want to see one. Oh, no, you don't. You just think you might want to see one.
Mm. Well,
the fire on it with a friggin' 22. Holy cow.
Well, and when we talk about military men and women having PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder or syndromes, that
got it. We
just automatically, you hear it most prevalent with the men and women overseas, and I know you know this. You're a veteran of armed forces, but what people don't understand is that this PTSD also happens with seeing these creatures, because it shakes these people to the core. Your brain is not ready to see something that you cannot relate it to. You cannot correlate it to anything you've seen, only something maybe that you've seen in the movies. And when you see it in the flesh and blood, and you're by yourself or during a circumstance that you didn't expect to see it, like in a dumpster, an alleyway, a walk off a park, a trail that you go to, or you're having a nice day and you're walking and then you see this thing, it shakes you to a neurologic level, a core. And so many of these people are suffering from PTSD. And the mind doesn't matter what the PTSD is from. It just happens, whether it's from events that happened in the war, being shot at, or shooting people, or seeing other things, your comrades go down, and just the whole compilation of everything, or these creatures. It's a different thing, but it's real PTSD that has a lifelong effect. And I've spoken to many, many people that this has happened to. And I tell them, you'll never forget, but you'll just, in sharing is good medicine. And being able to talk about it, as much as it's very uncomfortable and has been, every day, every week, every month, every year, we'll just get a little bit better on being able to, when you fully share and discuss what you saw, you'll never forget it. It'll just be a better way once you share to cope with what you saw.
Yeah, you're making me feel better. I'm not shaking anymore.
Good. And it doesn't mean that I have the expert handle on all this either. It just means that I'm as intrigued as now many as you are, because you go through this immediate terror of your mind is racing. What the heck am I looking at? What is this? And it's just racing with all these questions, yet you're terrified. You can't compare it to anything. And then after the event happens and the adrenaline works down, then you're in a almost like a quest. And that's what happens to many of these people. They're on a quest to figure out what's going on. What is it that I saw? How come I haven't been told about these things? I understand people are trying to cover this up. Why are they covering it up? This irritates me. I need to tell people, but yet if I tell, people are going to be labeled me as crazy. And so that's what these shows do. It informs people, but to at least I tell people, even if you think all of this is a hoax, that's your opinion, but at least allow 1 to 2% to absorb in, because if it ever happens to you, I'm telling you, they are real. And if it happens to you, you need to know who to talk to and who not to talk to, because that's a whole nother can of worms.
You got to talk to people with like minds.
Yes, because you don't have to convince us that these things are real. So that's the first part of any encounter story. You'll be, when you tell someone, they have to at least be open-minded or have had an experience to say, I believe you. Just tell me what happened. And if you cannot get past part 1 of convincing someone that these are real, then part 2 of what happened to you, they're not really going to listen. And you'll know it. And
yeah, by looking at them.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. You can just see it. Like they've got this,
Yeah.
all right. And that can be very aggravating, frustrating, and it'll make you mad. And I had a gentleman that, and we're good friends now, and I need to speak to him here soon. And him and his cousin were attacked on this reservoir in Ohio. It's episode 24. And he was trying to just spill his guts to his wife of everything that happened to him, because he was acting odd. And she finally just came out and said, what's going on? And he just come out and told her. And he said, Lance, I don't think she believes me. I said, well, here's what you're going to find. You're trying to feed an elephant to someone during one sitting. It's not going to work. You have to feed them a spoonful at a time. I said, I know it is, you just want to just verbally vomit everything that you saw. Just get it off your chest. But you're talking to someone that's not had the same experience. They don't even know these things are real, and they weren't with you. So you're trying to give them the same experience you had, and it's hard to do that because the situation's different, the context, the surroundings all different. They're in a safe zone. They're at their house, and you're explaining what happened. I said, so you're trying to feed an elephant to them all at once, and they're going to just not, they can't do that.
They won't digest it.
They won't digest it. And so even loved ones and family members sometimes can view you as, Dad's lost it. He's been at this too long. He needs a vacation, when it's very frustrating. And that's what happened to this gentleman. He ended up separating from his wife, and so many other factors happened after this. We're going to have a follow-up on what's happened to him since that event. That it's just it was a, even if you were to write a movie, I mean, it's just incredible what happened to post after this, what happened to him and his cousin. So
I lost my concentration for a long time after that.
Oh, I can only imagine.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the brain, when you have a post-traumatic stress, what we do know is that there's been lots of MRI studies and CT studies of the brain with someone that has a post-traumatic episode or event, and that frontal lobe of the brain has massive neurologic firing. It's kind of like the brain went into this overload firing pathway, and it's like it had a nervous breakdown, if you will. And the brain is firing all at once. Now, when I say firing, I mean the brain is an electrical powerhouse of all these circuits. It's the CPU of the computer. And so it's a massive dump or overload. And so the brain is firing. So you find that the person, it's very difficult to make decisions, even simple decisions. They have difficulty remembering even short-term things. They can remember long-term things, but short-term things, like where to lay my keys. Well, I know we all have those moments, but I mean, it's more prevalent with them. They can read something, and then they can't tell you what they read. They can't focus. They have a problem sleeping. And what has to happen is that this firing can't just be at will sometimes. It has to kind of start to fade down every day, every week, every month, and fade down. And so it's a process. So a lot of these men and women, again, sharing is good medicine. And so they go through a debriefing period. And that's really kind of what we're doing with the show, is we're debriefing what occurred to give a person a safe environment. What is it you saw? Because we need to share with people out there if they've seen something, because we don't want them to bottle it up. And we realize, again, what we said earlier, many people with various backgrounds, they don't want to share this because they're afraid to lose their job, their pension, and their colleagues will be like, he's been way too long at this profession.
Yeah, time to go.
Time to go. So that's why it's so important, is to share this and to realize that there are things that are terrifying that are real out there. It's just not in the movies. And it's been covered up for years.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes, sir.
In your opinion, why would our federal crooked government let this continue? We lose our citizens, children, men, women, and they let it continue. Are they going to let it go? Let it go until a point comes where during our cities and still deny it?
I wish I knew the exact answer to that, and I don't. I can only think that there is a portion of our government, and I hate to say this, but I feel almost as if there's a portion of our government that they're so entrenched and deep, deep state shadow government behind the scenes that the average Joe citizen doesn't know that this part of the government exists. There's no budgets at this level. There's too many agencies that comprise this shadow type of government. There's so many agencies that are covering up, that are involved, that I think that there are portions of the government, whatever happens to the people, happens. And I hate to say it that way.
Even Congress don't know about this stuff.
I would say there are portions of Congress that probably don't know about this stuff, or choose not to know about this stuff.
Yeah, what are you going to do about it anyway?
Well, that's just it. There's
no power.
When you don't have a budget and you're not voted but you're appointed, And a lot of these people, I'm only guessing, are are active military still, and that are special operations type of personnel, Green Beret, Navy SEALs, you name it, in every branch. And then they also contract out civilian businesses and people who are under just as strict of confidentiality and secrecy that it's so covered up that just nothing ever gets out. So I think they may view injuries to people, if and when they do happen, I think it's just a side casualty. Oh, well, and then they cover up that if it unfortunately ends up in a death.
Collateral damage.
Yeah, just collateral damage. Sorry about that. And then the death never gets really exposed for what it was. It was a bear mauling. It was wild feral hogs that got them. It was just they just happened to fall out of a tree. Or if it's so bad that they can't make it up, I don't know. I can't prove what I'm getting ready to say, but I think that a lot of these missing persons they found and they just left them as missing persons.
Oh.
To not have to describe or divulge what they really found. That there was too much evidence of something that's not a bear that they couldn't really cover it up to that point. So now I can't prove. That would be horrific. I know what I'm saying sounds atrocious, but I can't help but think that some of these missing persons are not. That would mean that they would be covering up. That would be a crime to do that. But I don't know. I just kind of take it to the next level. I just say that I'm just a guy that puts things together. And if they're willing to let them go and just kind of see if they might hurt people or not, then why not just go ahead and cover up a missing persons? If there's too much evidence to point to one of these creatures, just let it be a missing person. Don't say you even found the person.
But there's so many of them in these national parks, for one instance, right?
Yeah, these wildlife management areas and so many of these other places, you can't help but think that, I mean, there's no one touching them. You can't hunt there. Mm-hmm. I mean, you can't hunt, so it just
it's like the national park rangers. Are they federal?
I'm not sure. I'm thinking they are. You do have national park rangers, and then you have, of course, in a state level, you have state park rangers. So I'm going to say that they are probably a national park ranger. The rangers are much different, like at Yosemite, obviously, or some of our gorgeous national parks that are like at a state level.
So they're controlled then?
They are. And there are, David Pilates.
Pardon me?
Say it again?
I said, if they want their paychecks and retirement, they better shut up.
Well, that's probably what's been forced upon a few of them. We don't know how many, but I'm sure that if you want to continue to retire in this division and earn a pension, what you just saw and what you recorded from the individual of what happened, you'll keep quiet.
Well, they're complicit to murder.
David Pilates, who was an investigator, I can't remember his background all right now. I know people right now will know, but he, of course, was writing one of his books, and he had two rangers of a national park speak to him, the way the story goes, on some things that were happening at a national park level of people disappearing. And that he was trying to get stats from these national parks on Yosemite and Yellowstone, and he was having a hard time finding out the exact number of missing people. And they didn't want to say. And he had two rangers that were former rangers come to him and say, yeah, we've known about these missing people, and then when we do find evidence, it's bizarre. We'll find, of course, they told him in private, they'll find, a pair of boots of a child on a cliff, 300 feet up on this cliff.
Oh.
Just bizarre things. So, just odd things here and there.
That's Twilight Zone stuff.
Yeah, and so you wonder, it's just things like this that don't get reported back, so they just kind of leave things like that. And so he was sharing that with David Pilates, and that's what made David Pilates never comes out and says it's due to a Bigfoot or anything like that, but he lets you kind of add all that and connect the dots.
Those poor parents.
Oh, I know.
These people are complicit in this stuff are so cruel.
Well, and this is the reason why that you won't have the government confess to these. You won't have any department of any state confess. Department of Natural Resources won't confess to the presence of these creatures, because if they do, that's going to open up Pandora's box. It'll open up so many lawsuits, and how many people that are missing were due to these creatures. I realize there's bad people in the world, and they do bad things. A lot of missing persons is because of bad people, but I believe there are a portion of these missing persons in remote, wild locations that are due to these creatures, and that would open up lawsuits that would never stop.
Oh, they sue the federal government and the state.
Exactly. And then how much money is really could be lost on licenses, fishing licenses, camping, where you camp to go camping, hunting, everything. All this revenue is due to be lost, because if people know that these creatures are present, roaming wild for years, they wouldn't go. There'd be no way they would go.
So they sacrifice our children for money.
Well, more or less, people, they sacrifice really telling the truth, because, and that's probably not the only reason. I think they do it to not have panic, not only in a Christian faith level, but just general panic of people that there's a large bipedal creatures that have been present for years and years that are roaming out in the outdoors, and they just don't say anything. Don't ask, don't tell. And they just let it happen, and they try to control it through these secret agencies.
So when push comes to shove, when these things are in our cities, what is the feds are going to say then? Oops, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how far. I mean, I know that presently, I think on small communities outside, like here in Tulsa, it's no different than any state, is you have these clusters of homes that are out in the country. They formed a little community. We call them bedroom communities, but it was in the wild, and they dropped these big homes out there, and what's roaming in the wild still continues to roam out there near and close to homes. And so a lot of people still have a lot of sightings, and there's sightings that happen very close to, I've had a dogman sighting 2 miles from my house. And
wow.
Do I think that at night, being that we're on the edge of still prairies and trees and everything, that some of these creatures come close into town? I sure do.
Are you 2 miles from town?
I'm only about from downtown Tulsa. If the traffic is relatively decent, I can get to downtown Tulsa in 15 minutes.
Yow. Holy cow, that's closer than me.
Yeah, and within where I live right now, I can literally be in the country in 1 minute.
Man, that's too close.
Yeah, so I'm literally was 2 miles exact from the first dogman sighting this gentleman saw, and I'm about 2.5 from the second one he saw.
Well, they'll be coming to our cities in the near future, I think.
Well, I hope not. I hope that, if the only way that something like that would is food purposes, right? So if your wildlife abundance of food and protein gets diminished, then they start reaching. I mean, that's why they go to campsites, I'm saying, for food. They go to dumpsters and things of that nature. So it's very possible you start looking for food. So where do you go? You go to where people have their little foo-foo dogs, and they have cat and dog food outside, and they have dumpsters outside, and all those things. You go
That's
to you go to farms that have guineas and chickens and goats, and we have that just outside where I live, not too far. I mean, I can be literally in the country in 1 minute, and people have all that, and they have cattle and they have goats and all that. So you go to where the food is, and you go to where the food is that you don't have to work at it so hard.
easy pickings.
Easy pickings, right? And I think this dogman creature that was seen 2 miles from my house, it stays around that turnpike because those deer are crossing. That's a major deer crossing, and when a deer gets hit, you know, roadkill, easy meal. You don't have to work. You don't have to work at it. All you have to do is just drag the carcass off.